Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well and had a wonderful weekend. If you're new here, I'm Jo. I do craft videos and I hope you enjoy the video. So yeah, we'll get into it. So I wanted to make some miniature trees. I've seen this idea somewhere and I cannot for the life of me remember where I'd seen it because I wanted to be able to give credit to the person that I saw, but unfortunately I can't remember. I'm going to be doing some projects coming up where I'm going to be using quite a lot of trees, so I just thought for today's project I'll show you how to make the trees. So for the basis of the trees, I'm using garden twine and I'm also going to be using some wire. Now I want my trees to be quite small, so I've measured a 2-inch strip of twine. And if you want your trees to be longer, then you would want longer strips of twine. And if you want them to be smaller, then you would use shorter bits of twine. But 2 inches is roughly enough that I need for my trees. So now I'm just going to use that piece that I measured as a rough guide. And I'm just going to continue to cut strips until I've got quite a few. So I am going to have to cut more twine in a bit, but I'm going to start to take some of this apart. And all I'm going to do now is use my nails to take it apart into 2 sections. And then once I've got the 2 sections, I'm going to take one of the sections and break that down even more till I've got small bits of fibres. And I'm just going to continue to do this with the pile of twine that I've cut, and I'm just going to lay it down on the table, making sure that it's all in the same direction, so it's all going vertically and not vertically and horizontally. I want it all to face the same way. I'm going to continue to do this until I've got a fair bit, and then we can do the next part. So now I have enough for one of my trees. I want my trees to be quite dense, so if you want them to be a little bit more sparse, then you don't need to use so much twine. But now I'm just going to take some wire and measure it roughly the length of my twine, and then fold it over and cut it to size with some wire cutters. So now that I've got the length of wire that I want, I'm going to take the end that is folded and using some pliers, I'm just going to twist this at the end just to make the 2 pieces of wire lay more flat. And then once that's done, we can take our wire and we're going to open up the 2 pieces, and I'm just going to pop all our twine in between the 2 pieces of wire, and this is so we can sandwich it together like so. And then once I'm happy with how the twine is laying, so it's more in the center, we're going to take the pliers and we're just going to start to twist this around. It would have been more ideal to use some wire that was a little bit thinner than this, but this was all that I had, so it took a little bit of time to do, but using the pliers to save my fingers, I'm just going to continue to wrap this around until I'm happy with the shape. So once I'm happy with the shape of my tree, I'm just going to cut off the excess wire at the top, and it should still be twisted so that the top fibres won't fall out. And then just using a pair of scissors, I'm going to give it a quick trim. I'll do a proper cut later on, but for now I'm just going to take off some of the excess, and I'm just going to move the fibres around to fill up some of the gaps and just take off the bits that I don't need. So now I'm happy roughly with the shape. All the bits that I've cut off, I'm going to keep because I'll use this in my garden diorama because I want to make some topiary trees with it. So I'll save that for a later date. But now that I'm happy with the shape, I'm going to make a few more and then we can start to work on the trunks. So for the trunks of the trees, I'm actually going to use air dry clay. You don't have to use air dry clay. You could use paper mache. I suppose you could maybe use tin foil, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut a piece of masking tape to the size that I want and then trim this down again. And I'm covering the wire just because the air dry clay will stick better to the masking tape than it will the wire. So I'm just giving it a quick coat with masking tape. I'm just going to do this so that the whole thing is completely covered and it's still quite thin, and then just trim off the excess at the bottom. Once my masking tape's in place, I'm going to take some air dry clay and I only need a tiny little bit, and I'm just going to start at the top of the trunk and just use my fingers to smooth this around until I've completely covered the trunk, adding a little bit of water every now and again and just rolling it in between both my hands so that I can get the shape that I want. I don't want it to be completely flat. I want it to have a few dints in it just to add a little bit of texture. And then once I've got the clay onto the trunk of the tree, I'm just going to use a small piece of tin foil that I've rolled up into a ball, and I'm just going to press it into the air dry clay to give it some more texture and then let it dry. Once the clay is dry, I'm just going to use some dark brown acrylic paint to paint the whole of the trunk, and I'm just going to make sure that I've completely covered all the clay and let it dry. So once the dark brown paint is dry, I'm going to use a lighter brown and I'm going to do some dry brushing. I'm just going to pop my paintbrush in the paint, wipe off the excess on some toilet roll, and then just use what's left on the brush to add a little bit of detail to the trunk. So now that the trunks are dry, I can give the trees their final haircut, and I'm just going again, spread out the fibres, filling in the gaps that I want to fill, and then cutting off the excess. And I am going to keep all the bits that I cut off. Like I said, I'm going to be using them in my garden diorama. And I've got two projects coming up that I want to use these for. I think I'm going to add snow to them at some point, but until I decide how many I'm going to make and what I'm going to do with them, I'm just going to make some more for now. But we can have a look at what they look like, and here they are finished. And here they are. So, yeah, I had to glue them to the table so I could take some pictures and film it, but I'm really happy with how they've turned out. I love how thick they are, and yeah, I think I might make some sparser ones as well. I'm not too sure how many I'm going to need to make. It took me a day to make these ones without the air dry clay and the painting of the trunks. So, yeah, to do all the fibres for 5 trees, it took me a full day. So, I think I'm going to need at least another 5 or 6, maybe a few more, but I'm going to do that over the coming days, and hopefully I'll be back on Wednesday depending on how quick I can get these trees done. If I'm not back on Wednesday, it will be Friday. So until then, take care, have a wonderful week, and I'll see you then. Bye for now.